Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Favorite Guitar Solos in the co-captain's chair today. Mr. Guitar Hack himself. What is happening, my friend? How are you?
Hi, everything's good, man. Had a great show last night. The Black Sabbath show was a ton of fun, and really looking forward to doing this. And yeah, did a deep dive on Jimmy Page. Very
Yeah,
good.
so today is all about Jimmy Page guitar solos. And before Hack and I went on the air, definitely, when I do these shows, I don't like to kind of swap our list. But I had mentioned like one particular song, and he's like, "Yeah, that's not on my list either." And then I just realized that there's probably a lot of albums that I didn't even like go to really kind of put this list together. I mean, Page has not only done Zeppelin, but he has a couple little solo things. There's the Coverdale Page album. There's the Firm. There's the stuff with the Black Crows. I mean, so he's, there's, the Brief Little Time in the Yard. But so he's gotten around a bit. But, most folks are probably going to laser focus on the Zeppelin albums, which admittedly right now, I'll just let everybody know that's what I did. So, but it'll be interesting to see what you have done, because I have a feeling our lists are going to be pretty different. So,
yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
So I'll have you kick us off with your number 10.
Okay. Well, speaking of Outside Zeppelin, my number 10 is Outside Zeppelin. That I really like the Outrider record that he did. That would have been early 90s, I believe, maybe late 80s.
Late 80s, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, late 80s.
Yeah, I think that was after the Firm and before Coverdale Page, if I remember.
Oh, yeah, right before Coverdale Page. Yeah, really good record. Great playing on it. And the solo on that record that stuck out for me is a song called Hummingbird. And it's kind of a really slow, kind of a bluesy type of song. But Page is just, he's got this knack for, I mean, even if he's playing strict blues, he always pulls out these really nice melodic leads. And the other thing that, I mean, well, I'll mention all these signature things that he does that I absolutely love. One is when he does like the rake, you know what I mean? He rakes the strings before he hits the note. There's a lot of that on here. It starts off real bluesy, gets super melodic, very lyric. And the other thing too, his solos are they're almost like another melody line that you can
absolutely
actually sing over the progression. And yeah, very lyrical, very vocal. If you haven't listened to that, people out there have not listened to Outrider, if you're a Jimmy Page fan, I would highly recommend that record. It's really, really good.
I got to tell you, I haven't heard that album in probably 30 years, and I've never owned it, believe it or not. Never owned it. I don't know why.
It's a good album, man.
I have like almost everything else he's ever done, and I just, for whatever reason, just never got it. And I forgot even what it sounds like. That's
I kind of like it even more than the one he did after with Coverdale, to be honest with you. That's how much I like that record. Really good.
Yeah, so let's check that out.
Yeah, that's my number 10, Hummingbird off of Outrider.
Cool. Well, that's a good out of the box selection there. I like that. Mine's not that out of the box. Well, it's maybe sort of if you're talking Zeppelin. We'll go to the first album for I Can't Quit You, Babe. I mean, this song, it's funny. There are a couple songs on my list where there's not necessarily a signature solo, but a series of them.
Yeah.
And this is one of them, because there's, he's doing that like all throughout. And then he throws these little staccato bursts in from time to time. And then he starts to solo, and then Plant comes in, and then he starts to solo again, and Plant comes in. So it's almost like this kind of like call and response thing between the vocals and the guitar. And it's 60s British blues. It's what it is.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's so many of these little fills and solos throughout the whole song. And there is a main one, but I think that it's just the whole makes up just some spectacular stuff if you look at all these little bits throughout the song, and I just love it. And there's another classical blues song on the album that they remade, but I always tend to go to I Can't Quit You, Baby as one of my favorites when you look at the early stuff and the more blues based stuff. So that's my number 10.
Yeah, I love the blues playing that he does. I mean, I would, everybody goes on about Clapton and that. I'll take Page over Clapton any day of the week.
Page is great. Page is great. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't he record that entire first album and maybe even the second on a Telecaster?
The first one, that is the rumor. Yeah, it's a Telecaster and through like small amps, like Supros and stuff.
Yeah.
That's the rumor. So yeah, but everybody knows him from, the Les Paul and the Marshalls because
Oh, absolutely. Which,
sound
yeah,
remains the
he
same.
I think pretty much their second year in existence, he pretty much was, just using Les Pauls. But it's pretty interesting if that is indeed the case. The tones on that first album are pretty incredible, and to think that that
Yeah,
may be mostly Telecast. I mean, I own a Telecaster too, and they're kick-ass guitars.
yeah, they're
But
great.
you listen, and you're like, it doesn't really sound like a Telecaster, like we're normally accustomed to hearing a Telecaster. But give all the credit to him as a player and the amps he's using, and then the studio techniques. That's some pretty serious tone on that album, I think.
Well, you know what? Where it comes out is like, I mean, I good communication breakdown. Try playing that riff on the telly, and that's where you'll hear it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number 9, again, non-Zeppelin. The Firm. There's a song on there on the Mean Business record called Spirit of Love.
Yeah.
And oh man, that's just it's a fantastic solo. The other thing you got to give him credit for, and I'll mention this as we go through a lot, is he always finds, like, he just has the best friggin' guitar tone. And and sometimes the tone will be the same tone he's using throughout the song. Sometimes he'll tailor the tone specifically for the solo, which I'll get into that in a bit later too. But yeah, the tone on that is great. He does a lot of he does a lot of, this is like a Hendrix thing where he slides into his phrases, and that just it makes it more vocal. It makes it more natural sounding, and he does a lot of that on this record. And again, it's another alternate melody to the melody of the song. He's got a knack for picking out melodies. He's always playing with the chords too. He follows along with the changes. He's not just like, the music's kind of in the background and you just kind of there sitting there ripping. You can tell whether it's composed, or if he's just, because I've got some here that are improvisational, where he's just, you can tell he's just listening and playing with all the changes and composing on the fly. Just a master, absolute master guitar player. So anyways, I can go on about Jimmy Page forever. He's like one of my favorite guitar players in the world. But anyways, Spirit of Love, off the Firm, Mean Business.
Cool. That's a good choice. Yeah, those two Firm albums are pretty good. I think, I don't know like how well you remember like back when those albums were released, but there was a lot of hype with those Firm albums because I mean that was a super group right there. You got these two
Yeah.
legends that came
Or
together.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people were like a little bit let down by those albums. They were good. They were really solid. I dig them. But I think people were expecting that band to be the next Zeppelin and Bad Company together, sell tons of records, sell out tours all over the place, last for 10 years. And it just kind of quickly came and went.
Yeah,
And
because it didn't. I mean, I don't really get a lot of Zeppelin vibe from the records.
no, and I don't, and you don't get a lot of Bad Company vibe either.
No,
It's
no.
good. It's good music. But, Jimmy Page was a disaster case at the time. I mean, I'm sure that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah,
He was in the midst of, some lengthy drug addiction there. And, maybe it was only ever destined to be, a couple of years and that's it. Who knows? Who knows? They did what they could do at the time, but I think they're very solid albums. There's some good playing by him and some really good singing by Rogers. But I expected more at the time. But,
yeah.
it's cool to look back on and say, yeah, that was pretty good.
The Outrider record, there's a lot of Zeppelin-y stuff on that. Just like the Coverdale Page, there's a lot of that vibe on there, right?
Which just goes to show you then. So what happened on these Firm albums? Was he so far gone that
I can't remember what he did.
right? So I don't know. Was that Paul Rogers just trying to carry the load there, and
I don't know.
He just kind of showed up and put his name on the marquee? I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. All right, my number 9 is a song that's probably not as much known for a guitar solo as it is for John Paul Jones's clavinet playing. I have a feeling you probably know what I'm talking about. Little Trampled Underfoot from Physical Graffiti. And again, as with my first choice, a song that doesn't necessarily have a signature solo, but man, I'm a sucker for a wah-wah, right? And he is just cranking on the wah-wah, and he's like, he kind of bubbles up from underneath in between
Yeah.
all these clavinet passages and alongside Bonham's drumming. And it's just like, all he's got to do is wow.
Yeah.
And he's doing this in and out, in and out. And then there's all this, and it's awesome. And again, it's not like one lengthy guitar solo, but it's this like series of like stabbing notes and passages that he throws in throughout the whole song. And at the end, he just does that really fast picked little segment there. It's just like screaming while, Page is going, my baby, my baby. It just sends chills up and down my spine.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, I love the song. I love the album. But his just tone is just absolutely awesome. And
Yeah.
it's just another testament to what this guy could do, that he could really mesmerize you and impress you, even when he's not doing like a 35-second, solo and just saying, hey, it's all me here. Here, he's just kind of like, he's playing like second fiddle to the rest of the band, and he's still just dazzling you. And that's the mark of a really good player. And one of the things you and I were talking about the other day, it's like, I think for me, I've been into Zeppelin most of my life, and I think for me, I've always liked Page more. This is going to sound weird, for the stuff that he didn't do than the stuff he did. So like I have always, a lot of people, they have their favorite guitar players. They love the way they solo and all that kind of stuff, or maybe they're the creator of the big riffs and all that kind of stuff. But I think Page just does all these little things really well that keep all these songs together. So whether he's playing a really cool solo, whether he's doing, like I said, all these little fills and solos throughout a song, whether he's coming up with these great big heavy rock riffs, or whether he's doing this like gentle acoustic passages, he does like all these things very, very well.
Yeah.
And as opposed to, I hate to throw his name out there, but let's talk Yngwie Malmsteen, right? We know what Yngwie does well. Yngwie solos. Okay. He's not really a texture guy. He can play some really good riffs too, but and you're not going to expect Yngwie to do all this really, gentle acoustic stuff or whatever. He is who he is.
Yeah.
Jimmy Page can do like all these things and really, really well. So it's like he's not just saying, here I am, check me out, I'm on display here. No, he's writing the songs, he's doing all these little things, you put it all together, it's this amazing painting, right?
Yeah, that you hit the nail on the head. He's writing the songs. He's a composer, right? He's a composer, and for him, it's all about the songs. And the guy is so musical. And it's funny you mention that, because about you're picking songs where like he's kind of, you're looking at the licks over. I was focusing on just the solo, like the main solo. So let me just say that, because when you said that,
and I've done that too. I just, there were some of these that I'm like, I have to include.
You couldn't put them aside because I know what you're saying. Yeah. So my number 8 is off the very first record, Communication Breakdown. That is that solo is like the encyclopedia of rock blues licks, and you hear that solo and you can, especially the opening lick, you hear that lick in like every 70s hard rock guy for the, and even today, like that, it's like he wrote the textbook on those blues licks. And the other cool thing about it is, even when he plays licks, the way he ties them together, like a song like that, he's just basically ripping, right? It's not, I'm not playing, I mean, there's no chords to follow, it's a 3-chord song, so he's just basically ripping an E. But the way he ties the licks together, and the way he comes back into the song is just perfect. Straight pentatonics, comes out of it great. It's that's an example of, you've got here's your lead, you got this amount of time, go. And it's just, he just fills it, and he fills it beautifully. And just a great, very bluesy rock lead. And anybody that wants to learn how to play 70s rock, listen to that and pick out those leads, because they are universal now.
Exactly.
So it's my number 8.
Cool. All right, so on my first 2 picks, I basically said, don't look at me, I'm just the guitar player. Well, now at my number 8, look at me, I am the guitar player, for Heartbreaker from the second album. I mean, that's, again, everybody shut up. Let me do my thing for 20 seconds, right? And it's one of the most iconic
Yeah.
guitar solos in rock and roll history. And it's all these great, like, hammer on and pull offs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many guitar players in his wake would go on stage and they just be like, just doing, I mean, I used to see Paul Stanley do it, right? It's that's the Jimmy Page playbook right there.
Yeah.
And it's just so great. And it's like, it's just iconic. And then at the end, he's just totally ripping away, doing all this really fast pentatonic stuff. And it's like, it's classic Jimmy Page. And, that back then, I mean, we're talking, this is what, 1969. That was considered, wow, that's guitar stuff we'd never heard before. Because, you had Hendrix and you had Clapton and Beck, but that was, back then, to hear something like that, to hear everybody in the band stop and the guitar player just rip for however long that solo is, 20 seconds, 25. You didn't hear that too often. Nowadays that's kind of like, or, in the 70s and the 80s, you heard that stuff all the time. But just classic Jimmy Page.
And the other thing too that he's got is that, I mean, some people call it sloppiness, but he's got that thing, like, I don't, it's a character that when he's playing really, really fast, and he's playing faster than he can actually play, but it's got a charm to it.
Yeah.
And it's something that is inherently his. Like, if anybody else tried that, they probably wouldn't be able to get away with it. But for some reason, when Jimmy does it, it's music to my ears, man.
I always call it the Jimmy Page slur.
Yeah,
it's not like get the notes. Yeah, to a lot of people like, oh, it's kind of sloppy, but the notes are just kind of slurring into each other and everything like that. It's the Jimmy Page, the boozy way. It's like, it's just Page, man. It's like,
it works. It works.
It totally works. Yeah.
So my number 7. So I went to the BBC sessions for this version of the song, and specifically Paris, and the song is "Thank You." Again, he starts up, it's like straight blues phrasing, and then he finds, and even when he's doing the blues phrasing and his fills, and those riffs that he plays, those licks, like, they just fit so nicely into the melody of the song. And that is an improv solo. And his improvisational skills, I mean, the root of it is the blues, but then he always does this really nice mix of major and minor pentatonics that, like, that so he's got a lot of melody in everything he plays, and it just, the way he weaves in and out of it is just incredible. And again, the way he comes out of it slides perfectly into the vocal. And I mean, there's a guy just sitting there, he's got an idea what he's going to do, but he always takes it to some other places and is composing on the fly, and the guy's a master at it. So yeah, number 7, "Thank You," off of BB Sessions, Paris. Check it out. Really cool.
All right, I'm going to go another absolute classic here, also from the second album, "Whole Lot of Love." Man, that solo is just dripping. I call that his savage guitar solo, because you can almost feel his fingers bleeding while he's playing that. I mean, you got Bonham just crushing in the background, Bonham and Jones, and here he just kind of erupts like it's coming out of a volcano, and he's hitting those strings so hard, and it's just piercing. It's just dripping with emotion, and so heavy for the time. I mean, that whole song is kind of heavy, and you got the whole special effects thing happening before, all these crazy psychedelic sounds, and then he just comes in and just levels the entire playing field. Just so good. So good. So, and that's like 2 like really iconic guitar solos on that album that just everybody always associates, and everybody knows, like I said, I've said this a million times in doing these favorite guitar solo shows, a great solo is one that, even if you're not a musician or a guitar player, all the notes, you can hear all the notes in your head, you can hum them, you can sing them, even though you don't know how to play them, or you don't know anything about musical anything, right? And that is a perfectly constructed guitar solo.
Yeah, totally. So for my number 6, I went to straight up blues off of Zeppelin 3, "Since I've Been Loving You." And I mean, there's multiple versions of that, but for me, the best solo part is on the record, is on their studio record. straight up blues, man. You know, it's that solo is like a textbook on emotive. You know, if you really want to squeeze emotion out of the blues, um, you know, he starts off with the flourish, then he always finds those sort of those target notes to emphasize, and they always accent beautifully the vocal line of the song.
Mm.
You know, it's yeah, he I mean, the best guitar players are playing their guitar like a singer, like a vocalist, right? Like they're scatting basically, right? You know, and they're finding like alternate melodies, and he's doing it with that song. And again, the way he comes out of it and the way he comes back into the vocal, it's just perfect. And there's all these nice little signature little phrases in there that just, you know, I mean, he squeezes a lot out of out of,
He
out of that.
does, and I love the way he occasionally will, he'll start playing like all this really bluesy stuff, and then all of a sudden you'll hear a couple notes, maybe a succession of them that's like, what? There's a little classical going on there. There's a little flamenco going on there.
Yeah,
Well, that's some Middle Eastern tones going on there, and then he goes right back to the blues, and you're like, wow, it all made sense, right? Even though you
yeah,
can distinctly hear that something different is happening there, but then he goes back, and you're like, that was pretty cool, actually.
yeah.
Nothing
It's
like
nice
mixing up, right?
maneuvers. Yeah, he's full of those maneuvers, that's for sure. Yeah.
All right, my number six. I'm going to go back to Physical Graffiti. This is actually my favorite Led Zeppelin song of all time. It's the Rover.
Oh yeah.
And the Rover is great because it's probably, arguably, their heaviest song that they ever did. It's big and heavy, big, huge riffs, so kind of doomy almost.
Yeah.
But the solo is really different than the vibe of the song. It's like really lyrical. It's
Mhm.
absolutely beautiful in its construction. And it's almost like, in a way, it doesn't fit in the song, yet it fits so perfectly when you actually think about it,
Right.
because it gives you a nice little change of pace from all the bashing that's going on before and after it. And I think that's another great thing about him, is that he can kind of completely change gears to offer something completely different than what you were hearing throughout the rest of the song and make it really work. And he absolutely does it in that song. Because I've been a fan of the Rover for ages,
It's a great
and I
song.
always like, oh, it's big heavy songs. I like heavy stuff. And I've when I was younger, I was always like, oh, but the solo though is not. I would expect something a little different from the solo, whatever. Now as you get older, you
Yeah.
begin to appreciate subtleties like that. And
Mhm.
I think the solo in the Rover is actually damn perfect in that song. I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, it adds a whole other dimension to the song, right?
Yeah, it does.
Mhm. And yeah, so number 5 for me is the Rover. We're on the same page. Yeah, the tone is great on his guitar, which it usually is.
Yeah.
It's again like you were saying, that's kind of a heavy kind of, I don't know, is dirgy the right word? Kind of grinding.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and then boom, this all this melody just comes flowing out of this solo, which is, you know, and he's got that the part of that lead that sticks out in my mind is that last lick just before the vocal comes back in. And he's got and the other thing too that he does, that his bends are so vocal and they're just perfect, you know, like he's finding all these notes and micro bends and full step bends, and you know he's bringing in all these different accents, and it's just amazing. Yeah, his lead riffs, wrote down a couple of things. His motifs are incredible for that song, and again, that's an example of where he takes the Rover, adds another dimension, and really elevates that song and makes it even better than what it is. And that's the mark of any good guitar solo, if it just takes that song and just elevates it and makes it better. And yeah, the Rover is a fantastic
It's
example of
great.
just that. It is awesome. Love
And you
that.
mentioned the end of it again, talking about how you know these solos in your head, like just like a vocal line. It's like, it's just ba 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 bam ba ba bam ba ba
Yeah.
bam ba na 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 na
Oh,
na,
no.
and then
Yeah,
the riff
perfect.
caves in, right? And then the riff
Exactly.
comes back.
The way, yeah, come on. You know what? It's how you come out of it is just as important as how you start it. And he always comes out of it like, you know, this earworm, and it just sticks in your head, and then boom, right into the song again, right? Yeah, it's just great. It's
Yeah,
great.
it's good stuff. I love that song. I was just cranking it yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that. That's one of my favorite albums of all time.
Yeah,
I
me
just
too.
love everything on it. All right, so I'm going to go to the Presence album for my number 5, for Achilles' Last Stand,
Oh yeah.
which and this one is a bit of a longer solo, and this is one of his solos I think takes you on a journey. And it's one of, at times I use the word unorthodox when I'm talking about Jimmy Page solos, because it's long, it's twisting, it's weaving, it's looping. It's not overly flashy. And he throws in, like I talked about before, there's elements of blues in here. There's little bits of jazz, little bits of that classical and flamenco thing that I talked about, but it really, really rocks. And it kind of goes up and down and all over the place and in and around. It does not, his solos never take a straight path to anything. And I think that's what's so fascinating to listen to. And the Achilles' Last Stand is a song like that anyway. So I think here he creates a solo that really lives up to the rest of the song, because this is this big, supercharged, fast-paced, powerful, kind of progressive when you think about it, because a lot of the arrangements are pretty complex, right? And you got Bonham going berserk underneath. It's just really cool guitar riffs throughout the whole song. And then he's like, all right, so I'm going to solo, stay with me for a while. We're going to go on this roller coaster, and you just got to hang with me, right? And I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you. And then you listen to it, you're like, wow, that was really cool. Not what I expected. And just really, really interesting stuff. And he gives you a little bit of everything that he's all about there.
Yeah, that one that was like this close. That one was very close for me as well. So for number 4, I went to In Through the Outdoor and Fool in the Rain.
Yeah, that's a beautiful one,
right? Oh man. Again with, every note is the tone. He sometimes he'll use the same tone he's using throughout the song. Sometimes he'll come in with a completely different tone, which kind of right away tells you, okay, this is going to go somewhere else. But the tone is great on this. He digs through the progression. Again, he finds those great alternate melodies, super lyrical, has that vocal quality to it. And then he always does, he's got all these signature things that he does, but the cascading notes, and the rake thing that I love, like when he rakes it and then he hits the note. Yeah. And again, it continues into the vocal to make he does a little bit of counterpoint coming out of that. He doesn't just end it, so he's playing playing along with with Plant, sorry. And yeah, I mean, I always love that song. That song and All of My Love. I mean, All of My Love, it's not on my list, but just the way he starts it with that crashing sound, you know what that is? He's playing that on a Strat, and the way he starts that solo is he's got the arm all the way down, and he just lets it fall back, and then he starts. So that, again, the guy is so creative, so inventive in how he's playing a solo like this. You can tell is just composed, and when he composes a solo, it's just an awesome piece of music. I mean, the guy is a composer at the end of the day. He's an orchestrator, he's a composer. The way he layers the guitars, everything has its place, everything has its sound, and it's just, the guy's he's a genius, man. That's why we're still talking about him.
That's right. Yeah, that solo is great. And I love the rhythm underneath the solo. I mean, the whole song is just, Bonham is just doing this great little shuffle underneath. But
yeah,
and that solo, it's like, I'm pretty sure he's playing that on the neck pickup. And he's got, is that a little bit of fuzz he's got going on, just enough? I mean, it's got like this.
It's a really like, if that, here's why I talk about his tone. Like, if that tone out of context, out of that song, is horrible, right? Right? It's horrible. But in that song,
it sounds perfect.
It works.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know what I mean? The guy, like, he's hearing that and it's like, what the hell? And then when he put all the pieces together, it fits. And if he played that, if he used any other tone, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't sound as good. You know what I mean? It's just,
if it was too clean, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
If it was too distorted, it wouldn't have worked, but it's just enough. And like I said, it's really bluesing. It's kind of like bubbling up underneath. It's very, very cool.
It sounds almost like, to me, it reminds me of like a really overdriven like Hammond B3 organ sound.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And yeah, and
It sounds like it's going through a Leslie, actually, is what it sounds
yeah,
like.
yeah, exactly. And it's the 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 solo and that tone that he's using, being so radically different. It's like you're sitting there and like again, that I love the drum beat on that.
Yeah.
And then you hear this thing and it sort of like draws your attention. Like you have to hear that solo. And he takes you on this little trip and and brings you back in. It just, again, it's genius. Absolute genius.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. So my number 4, I'm going to go to this bad boy right here. A lot of really good solos on this album. As much as some people may be like, oh, that's one of the handful of Zeppelin songs that we've all heard too much. Black Dog has a killer song, a killer solo, I should say. Much like the main riff of the song, which is, this kind of twisting, weaving, gymnastic, acrobatic thing that's going on.
Yeah.
A lot of really cool bends in the solo. A lot of really, he does that crying note thing really well. Lots of pull-offs. And it's just like that whole solo section is just so well done. After that, it's a pretty aggressive song, for the time. This was one of Zeppelin's more, big rockin', just really hummable, catchy songs. And I think the whole solo is just another exercise for him in what he does so well. And when he wants to play fast and aggressive and just knock you over with some technique, he can do it, but yet he makes it sound very accessible. And I think another example of a flashy solo from him that doesn't come across as overly flashy, and it fits really well in this song that's just kind of takes the listener all over the place.
Yeah, and when you have a busy, like when you have a lot of stuff going on in the background, for him to play something that's still distinct and picks up your ear, that in itself is difficult to do, right?
Yeah, it is. And I like too, another technique he uses on this song that he does, it's like he'll repeat like the same lines over and over again for
Yes.
like, and it totally works. Not a
Yeah.
lot of guitar players can do that, where it just kind of keeps you hooked in. It's like, okay, he did it again. All right, he did those 4 notes again. All right, now where's he going next?
Yeah.
It really works in this song.
Yeah. It's got earworms in that one for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one, you mentioned this song earlier, Whole Lot of Love, but for me, there's on The Song Remains the Same, where there's lots of jammy stuff going on. There's
just a little bit, right?
Yeah, just a little bit of just a little bit, Jeff. But there's one specific jam when I even wrote down the time. It starts at about the 7-minute mark. I remember watching this on VHS tape many many years ago, watching The Song Remains the Same, watching the movie, and when he went into this, I absolutely lost my shit. And to this day, I still lose my shit when he does this. There's a point at the 7, if you remember, I mean, it's pretty lots to remember this song, but that particular section, they go into like this boogie thing, right? You go and plan is saying, boogie boogie, whatever, and then they start into this, and it's this rockabilly jam thing that he does, and he's just playing all this Scotty Moore stuff that you don't ever hear him play anywhere else.
He was a big fan.
Yeah, like, so you could and you can tell, man, he's just digging deep right into his bag, and he's pulling this stuff out, and you're like blown away by these riffs, man. It just shows a completely different side to his playing. And again, he's not just he's playing it masterfully, right? Again, the major and the minor pentatonic going on and on. There's a sliding riff he does, like I can see it when I hear it, and it's still to this day like still blows my friggin' mind. And yeah, man, you can tell on that, and that's, I don't know if they rehearsed that or if that's off the top of his head or what, but that little section that's just musical perfection right there. I mean, he nails it, and and then he goes don don, and then right back into the song like nothing happened, you know. Yeah, man. That, if anyone knows what I'm talking about, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back, 7-minute point, song remains the same. Listen to that boogie. It still blows my mind.
The art
Oh,
of improvisation and making
love
it
it.
work.
Oh,
Right?
love it.
Not everybody can do that.
No, no, not to that level. No way.
They were great at that early in their career. In fact, it's funny. You go back to the late '60s, maybe 1969 to about '73. Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple were both amazing, amazing improvisers, both bands. And they would go off and do these like half-hour long songs that, if you're not into that sort of thing, it could be seen as boring. But man,
Right.
if you're into this kind of stuff and jamming, but yet jamming at this, not really Grateful Dead jamming that just kind of goes off into the stratosphere. This is stuff that, it's you're in for the long haul with the journey, and you can't wait to see where they go next. And then they take it to a place that starts or that ends right where it began.
Yeah.
Like you said, I mean, Page just all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, here's where we were 10 minutes ago. Let's bring you right back. Now that we did that for a few minutes, right? It's
yeah.
Classic stuff.
Musical interlude.
That's right. There's a lot of that going on. The 70s. All right, where are we? Number 3, right? I'm going to go to Song Remains the Same as well. And I almost ranked this higher. I think the solo in No Quarter on this is just amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And I love it on, that album too, on the studio album on Houses of the Holy. But I think it's leagues better on here. And I love the song anyway, because it's just like kind of creepy and atmospheric with that electric piano that John Paul Jones is doing. And then he just like Jimmy just kind of, and I picture like the film, right? Because the stage is like awash in dry ice and smog and fog. And then Jimmy just kind of like walks up to the front of the stage and just rips into this like jazz flurry. Right. Then you got all the bent notes and the crying notes and all that kind of stuff. And you got the, again, little hints of like flamenco thrown in here and there. And then you got the electric piano just kind of simmering in the background, and they work so well together. And then at the end, he just absolutely just blazes, right? And it's like, well, let's go out with some rock fury at the end. And it's good. It's just long enough, but you almost wish it would have went on a little bit longer. And it's so amazing. And if I remember correctly, in the film, like about midway through the solo, they actually cut to like whatever John Paul Jones's little part of the movie was, whatever. I don't even remember whatever the hell was going on.
He's on the horses.
He's on the horse, all that kind of wacky stuff, right? And then they come back in, and Page is just kind of finishing the solo off. And it was just it's really cool to hear like all these bluesy, almost jazzy, runs going on while riding on the horse and all that kind of stuff. It's like the perfect soundtrack to Jones's little storyline piece there in the film. But just great stuff. Great solo. Absolutely love it. Like I said, I almost ranked it higher, but then I was like, all right, I got to be a little realistic here, what I'm going to put down. And so we'll see where we go next.
Well, it's funny you mentioned about ranking higher. Like my number 1 and number 2 are interchangeable, honestly. But number 2, also off of Physical Graffiti, is a masterpiece. I've said that a few times, but this is another one. 10 Years Gone.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Again, he dials in this tone that just, okay, we're going somewhere else here now, and that's another one where I mean, the whole song, the composition, the arrangement is amazing, because the way this solo is set up, it's like, okay, there's the break, go. And you could tell it's totally composed. It just, again, and it just takes you on a little journey within the song and kind of brings you back. The melody is amazing. Again, you can tell it's totally composed. He's playing with the changes, the chords. There's not a wasted note, not a wasted. Everything is perfect in the pocket, melodic. And again, he always introduces these nice. You talk about motifs, the repeating motifs. He does that again here. It's a textbook. It's like, this is how you compose a guitar solo. This is it. This is, it's again, it's a masterpiece of composition. The whole song is great to begin with, but make it even better. Like, wow. Yeah. 10 years gone off Physical Graffiti.
That's a great
Amazing.
one. So you almost like kind of explained or introduced my next pick about that perfect composition. Um, when it comes to a guitar solo, perfectly composed. There are a couple of songs in rock and roll history that we all know really, really well, perhaps too well, to the point of we know them so well we don't need to hear them again, right?
Right.
But the three songs in particular that I'm talking about here, each one of them have tremendous guitar solos, and I think with each one of the three, I'm like, all right, I've heard the song way too many times. Skip to the guitar solo because I still enjoy that, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
Right? Freebird is one of them. Hotel California is the other one. Stairway to Heaven is the other one. I mean, Stairway to Heaven is a perfectly composed guitar solo. And like I said, I don't necessarily need to hear Stairway to Heaven more than once a year. But if I could just take the solo out, I could listen to that once a month easily or more. It's perfect. It's just so perfect. It's one of the most iconic guitar solos in all of the 70s and maybe in all of rock history in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
I originally, when I was putting this list together, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to include Stairway to Heaven. Then I kept thinking about it, and then I went and listened to it, and I'm like, oh, it's just so freaking good. It's so good.
You can't ignore it.
You can't ignore it, right? Exactly. You can't. I can ignore the song because in fact, I think when I did my Led Zeppelin top 10 songs show, I did not include Stairway to Heaven in my top 10 songs because I like a lot of songs way better. But that guitar solo still fucking rules. There's no way around it. There's no way around it. It's so incredible. It's absolutely note for note perfect. And that's why when you go to listen to it on any of the live versions, I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but it's not quite the same. It's almost like that's the solo that has to be played exactly that same way all the time. Otherwise, it's like, yeah.
You're killing me over because you know what my number one is, right? It's like, everything you just said is like exactly what I was just about to say. Like, yeah, Stairway to Heaven, man. It's my number one. And everything you just said, I know the song's been played to death, but it does not diminish the incredible solo. It's perfectly constructed. It is the perfect guitar solo. Not one wasted note. The way he starts in slow, the way it builds, the motifs, it's everything is in there. Like from the first note, the way it climbs, and again, he plays the perfect lick in the middle. He's playing these again. He's got this way. I mean, his blues licks that you may have heard before, but they're not throwaways, man. They're like integral parts of it, and he's using them to accent those target notes in the melody, and it is the perfect composition. That's what. But for me, Stairway and 10 Years Gone, man, they're like,
yeah.
But I went with Stairway for number one, and exactly what you said too. It's like, okay, I love this solo. I listened to another version of it on Song Remains the Same, or so it's like, oh wait a minute, he's supposed to go there. He didn't go there. He went this way. No, it's not right. That's now you hear the wasted notes, and and he's searching and stuff. It's like, no. It's gotta be off of that it's got to be that version, the iconic version off of
And it can't be longer, right? It's got to be, because when he on some of those live versions he goes to extend it a bit, I'm like, now it's lost its impact because you're throwing all this unnecessary shit in there that doesn't really need.
Yeah, exactly, and that's true for a lot of the solos. I find, like, I mean, what did I had pretty much all album versions of, like, even Since I've Been Loving You. That's another one. There's a million on the BBC sessions. There's a million versions of it, and yeah, for me, the got to be the one off his Zeppelin. That being said, though, I like the Thank You. I prefer the BBC one over the studio version. So, but yeah, it's funny. You're all that stuff you were saying. Like, yeah. Did he look at
no
my
way to avoid it?
There's
no way.
Yeah, you can't.
So, in any other reality, my number one probably would have been that. But and you've already mentioned this one earlier, I have this love affair with Since I've Been Loving You. And for me, that is probably one of my favorite kind of bluesier tracks from the band. and it's easily my favorite Jimmy Page solo. And I almost went with the version on this because it's really good, but I come back to the perfection that is the original version on this album, and it's just it's so emotional. And Jimmy has always had this great way of kind of taking you on an emotional roller coaster when he's doing like kind of the slower bluesier stuff. And, and then at the end, you mentioned the cascading of notes that he just kind of showers upon the listener, and he does it so well in this. It's kind of looping. It's kind of unorthodox, but it's all the blues, and it just, man, you feel it. Like you feel like I listened to Since I've Been Loving You, and I feel that solo in my gut.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and he after the main solo, he continues to kind of throw some stuff out there, and he's right alongside playing, I'm about to lose, and he's still going in the background, and he's doing that. It's just brilliant stuff. Just brilliant. And I think that one of the reasons why I always really appreciated The Song Remains the Same version is because, you get to see him on, I never saw Zeppelin live, so I can only go by what I've seen on video, and, seeing him up there in Madison Square Garden, playing that solo and doing a pretty good job of it. I mean, I think that solo live from that album is more successful than, like, say, Stairway to Heaven, which I don't think was as successful from that performance. But Since I've Been Loving You, just my favorite solo by Mr. Page.
Yeah. Well, that's I mean, it's a blues, right? So there's a lot more room, to do stuff with it, right? Like to improvise and come, create, different things and so on. It's not as structured. Stairway to Heaven is pretty much, it's more of a structured song. It's like, you got to play, and that's the thing, right? He's got to play that solo within that window, and that's what I want to hear. And even in him improvising, I don't know, it just doesn't work. It just sound as good as it does on the studio record.
So, I hear you.
Interesting. We had a lot of similar picks, actually.
More than I thought we would. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
And I went outside, man. I went outside Zeppelin. I was listening to everything.
I think if I were to do it all over again, and I just didn't kind of just cop out and just take the Zeppelin route, I might have thrown a Coverdale Page solo in there, because he's actually got some really good solos on that album. And I might have thrown a Firm one in there too, but I just felt like, oh God, how can I not just pick the Zeppelin ones? Because there are so many great ones. But
for sure. Yeah.
So there you have it, everybody. Some favorite guitar solos of the maestro, Mr. Jimmy Page. So in the comments below, I'd like everybody to contribute their favorite guitar solos from the man himself. I'll be curious to see what you guys come up with. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer here, guys. Everybody hears these solos differently, and everybody appreciates them differently. So curious to see what everybody comes up with. And make sure you visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Hack, you want to give some links to where folks can find you?
YouTube, Guitar Hack. Check out the channel. It's just go on YouTube, go Guitar Hack. I got a Facebook page as well, and Instagram and all that stuff. But I've done 3 shows with Pete on that channel. We just did one last night on Black Sabbath, which was very cool. So come check out the channel. And Pete, I want to thank you so much for inviting me to do this, man, because this was a lot of fun.
Cool. Yes, it was. Well, we'll be seeing Mr. Hack on the channel again, hopefully in a couple of weeks. I have a couple other ideas for guitar players that I'm going to throw at him off camera. So we'll check into that. We've got another episode of Favorite Guitar Solos coming up next week. Frank Marino, guest starring 2 Sea of Tranquility alumni who used to write for the website years ago. I've kept in touch with all these years. Mike Blackburn and Ryan Sparks are coming on to join me next week to offer up our favorite guitar solos of the Canadian wonder known as Frank Marino of Mahogany Rush. So stay tuned for that and all sorts of other stuff happening on the channel. And for Guitar Hack, I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody.
Cheers, everybody.